The other day, I received a letter from an ambassador from a free and friendly country. It began, "Dear Mr. May, it's no exaggeration to say that in the span of about 8 weeks, the focus and priorities of every country in the world have been upended by the unprecedented outbreak of COVID-19. I wrote in response, "Dear Mr. Ambassador, actually, that is an exaggeration. Countries ruled by regimes hostile to democratic societies like yours and mine have kept their focus and priorities firmly in place. Despite the pandemic, their conduct has been as belligerent and as oppressive as ever. In fact, with the world distracted by health and economic crises, some have grown bolder. Start with China's rulers. They've cracked down on Hong Kong, rearresting more than a dozen pro-democracy activists. They're violating one country, two systems, the promise they made in exchange for which Britain handed the territory over to communist control in 1997. They're demanding Hong Kong legislators pass laws criminalizing dissent. Now, let's consider the rulers of the Islamic Republic of Iran. They continue to spend on a uranium enrichment program that David Albright, who's the president of the Institute for Science and International Security, calls in equal measure uneconomic, unnecessary for Iran's nuclear program, and unusually threatening to regional and international security. Also, and in violation of international agreements, Iran's rulers recently launched a military satellite that, they proudly acknowledged, will wage intelligence warfare against the United States. Okay, on to North Korea, which last month tested both short-range ballistic missiles and what state media called super-large, multiple rocket launchers. Russia's military, certainly not self-isolating. High above the Mediterranean Sea, a Russian Su-35 fighter jet buzzed a Navy reconnaissance aircraft. Russia also has tested anti-satellite missiles in recent days. You should know too, Mr. Ambassador, that non-state terrorists are not social distancing. In Mozambique, members of a franchise of the Islamic State killed more than 50 people. Young men who turned down invitations to join the group were beheaded. Meanwhile, in Kabul, members of a different Islamic State branch attacked a Sikh temple, killing more than 24 worshippers. And in at least a dozen Afghan provinces, the Taliban struck both soldiers and civilians. So, Mr. Ambassador, here's the conclusion to which I think these developments lead. You, I, and other decent folks regard the pandemic as usually significant, a matter of life and death. But the world is a diverse place. Communists, revolutionary Islamists, and proponents of other despotic ideologies consider life and death no big deal. After all, they kill people all the time, civilians and their own subjects very much included. What they do see as imperative is staying focused on increasing their power at the expense of enemies whose morality they regard as weakness. Their goal is a new international order, one that will be illiberal, unfree, undemocratic, and intolerant. Under the rules of this new world order, nations like yours and mine will submit or will suffer the consequences. We find that hard to imagine. We wish it were not so. That may suggest we suffer from a lack of imagination and a surfeit of wishful thinking. In this increasingly sickened world, that's increasingly dangerous. Stay healthy, Mr. Ambassador. Thanks for listening.